Hello everyone and welcome to my guide to a competitive deck that I named Quarantine. The deck itself is very strong and I would say that it is an A-tier deck right now. I won the EU Monokuma Tournament with this deck and I got to top 15 Masters on EU. One thing I have to mention is that this deck is a variation of a deck made by infinipatrons, so shout out to you my man. Before we get into discussing cards, let's first talk about what type of a deck this is. This deck is sort of a overall combination of everything, because I wouldn't really say that it's a aggro deck, because it isn't. It is a sort of a combo deck, and it is sort of a control-ish mid-range deck. So the deck is really consistent, because you do have a really nice curve, and you do have draw power to hopefully draw that Atrocity, Dehu Endure combo at the end of the game, which can pretty much win you the game even if you're losing or getting pushed by a deck that's losing your matchup. So when talking about what you should play on the start, what happens with this deck, the overall idea is pretty simple, right? You have lots of units that keep on dying, especially with the Brood Awakening, Crawling Cessation, and the Helpless Aristocrat, which helps you with that. So all of those units die, and even if you're losing, at the end of the game, you draw Dehu Endure, which can pretty much be like 17-17 at late game, and just by attacking, it might win you the game. But you also have Atrocity, which supports that combo, which can pretty much kill the opponent in one turn. So the idea at early game is you try to get low mana cards that you put down and start controlling the board from the start of the game. Elise is a really strong card in early game, and together if you level it up with the spiders, you might get even stronger control of the board in early game and make the opponent lose value with the cards that he must use to either clear Elise or clear the board, because you have a bunch of 1 mana cost units, right? So the matchups that are sort of an issue with this deck, I would pretty much say what Modder's Control is the only deck that I had real issues with, because it does have Withering Wail, which deals 1 damage to all enemy units, as well as Avalanche. So those two cards are the board clear that is sometimes a small issue for this deck, not usually if they only have one, since you do have 3 Brood Awakenings, you do have Crawling Sensation, which altogether, if they only have one of those two, it isn't really an issue. When talking about Ezreal decks, you pretty much destroy them most of the time as well, which is pretty nice. So, in early game, if you're playing versus an Karma deck or an Ezreal deck, you really want to get that Sentry or Aristocrat. Those two cards are not going to produce value versus a Karma or a Ezreal deck for them to clear, because basically they die and you draw a card, they get nothing. Or it dies and summons a Spiderling. Again, they don't really get value. If you're playing versus a aggro deck, you really want to have one, at least, like, you want to have one Vile Feast, you want to have Crawling Sensation at the start if possible, together with a unit combined. But whichever matchup you play against, I almost always keep one Glimpse. Maybe it's not like the smartest idea, but like usually I really like to have one Glimpse on the start of the game, because this deck has a lot of small units. Of course it does have Pack Mentality, Atrocity, and Scuttle and Dehu Endure, which you cannot really play anywhere on the start of the game. But while with Glimpse you can pretty much draw enough and keep your units controlling the board and keep on controlling the board throughout the game. So one Glimpse I would recommend to keep on the start almost against any matchup, maybe only against an aggro deck that does not have Draven, because usually if I see a Draven or some other unit like Zed, I really like to keep one glimpse, to just like Zed will kill your aristocrat or whatever you have that's like low cost, and together with glimpse you don't really lose value against it, so it's perfect. One variation of this deck I have to talk about is the one that has 2 Thrashes and 1 Tryndamere. You might have seen this one, which is almost the same as this one, doesn't have 3 Scuttles, and instead it has 2 Thrashes and 1 Tryndamere. They do also not have Fresh Offerings, which I will discuss as well. That deck is also pretty good, but for me, I feel like it's more of a control-ish deck when you combine it with 2 Thrashes and 1 Tryndamere, and this deck is not about control. Even though you do have early and mid control throughout the most of the match, so it is a control-ish deck, as I said. So, discussing why do I have Fresh Offerings and 3 Scattergeist, because it's very weird to have 3 of them together with a Fresh Offerings as well, so it's 4 cards. Well, the reason behind it is like, of course you have a million units die, so Fresh Offerings is pretty easy to get, easy to proc it. But why 3 Scattergeist? So, when I was playing and I was having like 1 Scattergeist and instead I would play a second Trash or a Tryndamere, or I would play some other variation, I just felt like I didn't have enough strong units on the board, and sometimes if they have Purify or some other thing that pretty much counters your Deho Endure, Scattergeist always came in nicely and won me the games. So in my opinion, it was a really good choice that I made, but like, you can always change like 2 units of this deck and it's gonna be the same deck and it will work, right? So if you remove 1 Scattergeist, if you remove Fresh Offerings, or if you remove 1 Pack Mentality, the deck itself will still stay the same and it will work very well. The issue with this deck is sometimes Demacia, if they have a Fiora that they can defend and pretty much kill your small units, and you do not have Glimpse to deny it, you will have an issue. The second issue is also, again, Demacia with the Purify. If you do not have strong early aggro because they play Abandonment and they are controlling more than you can, and they purified your Deho Endure, you might lose as well. Anything besides those 2 that I had issues with sometimes, and War Mother's control, everything else, this deck is pretty much really strong against. Aggro decks, you have more control than aggro decks. You have Wild Feast to heal you a bit as well, and like deny his early Spiderling, or like Teemo, or whatever they have, or like Green Glade Duo. And Pack Mentality is a card that is very good here as well, so I would not recommend having only 1. I feel like 2 is the optimal amount, and 3 is a bit too much. And you're not gonna see much of play if you have 3. One of them is just gonna sit on your hand and not be usable. I use it as a defensive spell sometimes. If you play against Bannerman and you're losing control, Pack Mentality could completely deny his one entire attack, or you could actually attack with it and get some really strong value there. Skitter, also a really good card when defending against the Zed or defending against the Negro deck. And overall, I would say, like, try this deck out and see if it works for you. If you want to see some gameplay with this deck, feel free to join on my Twitch. I'm streaming almost every day. And thank you all for watching. I'll be making more guides and such, and have a nice day.